The South African Municipal Workers Union in the city of Tshwane wants officials responsible for fuel procurement delays or delivery shortage, in fact, at the beginning of this week, to take some accountability. The shortage resulted in the grounding of part of the Tshwane Metro fleet for a few hours. Let's talk about the situation now. We're joined by Selby Bokaba, who's the city of Tshwane's spokesperson. Selby, a very good afternoon to you. First things first, at a very basic level, what did you mean when you meant that there was a glitch that ultimately led to the failure to deliver diesel on Tuesday morning, I think it was?
Good afternoon, Tembi and the viewers. What I meant about the logistical glitch was that we started experiencing diesel shortages since the beginning of August due to delayed delivery of crude oil to the refineries that supply our contracted service providers. So we're talking of a value chain here, and we happen to find ourselves at the tail end of the value chain because the contracted service providers, they get diesel from the refineries, and refineries themselves get that from crude oil. So if there is a break in the value chain, we get affected. So this was something that was beyond our control, and we can't apportion blame on the officials for the delayed delivery of diesel.
How much fuel do you order for the bus fleet? At what frequency that you would ultimately end up with a situation where there's not enough fuel to get those buses on the road?
Tembi, we've got 30 major depots that we run in the city, and annually we consume over 4.2 million liters of fuel, which translates to about 350,000 liters of fuel every month. So we make those plans up front, and we've never encountered problems in the past. So it's something that happened this time around, and at the weekend we began to notice that the levels of fuel at our depots was beginning to drop. And we made contact with the service providers, and they explained to us that the problem that they had experienced since the beginning of July is still persisting. But we are now catching up, or they are catching up with deliveries. There was a delivery that was made on Tuesday afternoon at about 10:30 in the morning, and I was assured that there was another delivery yesterday afternoon. So we don't anticipate encountering problems going forward.
But if this is a problem that had been brewing from the end of July, surely someone should have had the foresight to make sure that there isn't a situation in September where your buses were unable to move, inconveniencing commuters precisely because there was not enough fuel.
Yeah, what we're trying to do now is to ensure that, and I communicated this to our colleagues at Tshwane Bus Service, that we need to try to ring fence fuel for the buses, because remember, we've got a fleet of over 5,000, and most of the fleet of the city, be it for Tshwane Metropolis, emergency services, and our fleet that we use for water and electricity, they refill at our depots. So we said, going forward, let's ensure that the fuel that is at our depots is ring fenced for only Tshwane Bus Service, and other vehicles can go and refill at what we call on-road fueling. So it's we use the Pretoria West engine garage, so they can go and fill up there, but they don't have to fill up at our depot, so that this problem that we experience doesn't recur.
Could you not have done that fill up at the engine fuel stations before buses were grounded on Tuesday?
Yeah, this always the first time. We learn from some of the mistakes that we made, and going forward, we make sure that such a problem does not recur.
Samwu believes the problem is simply that you're not buying enough fuel to begin with.
Well, I've just explained that we buy per annum 4.2 million liters of fuel, which translates to about 350,000 liters a month. That's enough to cover our more than 5,000 fleet.
Mm-hmm. And what about Samwu saying that they raised the concerns around the issue of fuel and what would ultimately result in the situation on Tuesday? When did those conversations start, and what was agreed? I'm
not au fait with what Samwu is saying. I read their statement, I have not been briefed that they raised this issue. I remember that there was a strike action outside Tshwane House and there was a list of demands. I can't remember all those demands that were there. Perhaps one of the demands was the issue of fuel. But, to comment on what Samwu is saying, is very interesting that when Samwu affiliated members decide at a drop of a hat to down tools, you don't see Samwu coming on board and condemning that kind of action, which leaves passengers stranded. And I'm surprised that now there's this enthusiasm, but it's an enthusiasm that we appreciate. We hope that going forward, when their members embark on unnecessary strike action, some will come on board and display this kind of enthusiasm to say, don't strike, because your strike action is impacting negatively on the valued commuters who bought weekly and monthly tickets to commute.
So what happens now, Selby, with the supplier that you use for this fuel? There have been problems, as you told us, since July with them being able to access adequate amounts of diesel for you. Are you going to keep them on board? Because there was a report earlier today or yesterday that you'd in fact gone with a different supplier.
No, we did go with a different supplier. We've got contracted suppliers that get oil from the refineries. But when there are problems, so that's why we make sure that in the event we encounter challenges with our contractors, we are able to have an alternative. And the alternative is what I described as what we call on-site fueling. So there were some of our buses, because remember, it's not all our buses that were grounded. We run a fleet of, or rather operations of 160 buses a day, and it was more than half that was affected. So there were some buses that were running, but there were those that were running, they were able to fill up at the engine filling station in Pretoria West. So we make sure that we've got contingency plans in the event that our contracted suppliers encounter challenges.
Selby Bokaba, good to speak to you, sir. Thank you.